Welcome to Mondays at Noon. My name is Chris Stevens. I'm the acting associate dean in the School of Business Administration. I want to welcome you. We come together every Monday to talk about an issue that we think is interesting for our community and our students. And this week, thanks to the hard work of the MIS faculty and a number of willing volunteers, we've got careers in MIS. We're going to spend some time learning about management information systems and understanding a little bit more about what the opportunities are in this ever-growing field. So I'm going to turn it over now to Russell Wilden, who's agreed to be our moderator for today. Russell, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we're excited to have everyone here today. Thank you to all the students that came, and also thank you to all our speakers that took time out of their day to come speak with us. For all the students, there's a QR code in the top left of the first screen, and then it'll also be on the last slide, and that'll just be to mark your attendance for any classes this is required for. And then for the speakers, we see MIS as kind of the bridge between technology and business, and we think that the three panelists we have today can give us some great perspective on that. So we have Fiona Sutherland from Deloitte, Max Mortensen from Amazon and Fire TV, and then Ed Barrie from Treasury 4. And each of them will go into their backgrounds a little bit more. And as they present, we encourage you to think about questions and just be prepared for that segment. We're going to have about 20 minutes towards the end for any questions that students might have. So without further ado, I believe we have Ed Barrie to start.
All right, thanks Russell for the invitation to speak today and present to the Gonzaga students. Love the university, love the basketball team and the university and everything it stands for. And we've been fortunate over at Treasury 4 to have a number of interns work at Treasury 4 that are students at Gonzaga. So I'm Ed Barrie, one of the co-founders and the chief product officer for Treasury 4. We're a startup and we're building software solutions for corporate finance and treasury teams, which is coming out of our experience in 20 plus years in corporate treasury. And so my background is having been in starting out my career out of college in the investment management broker-dealer world. Then spent 7 years in the global corporate treasury at Microsoft, where I was responsible for their treasury technology portfolio, internal and third-party applications, as well as treasury operations for 3 years while I was there. Subsequently went to Itron in Liberty Lake as their assistant treasurer and built out their global treasury operations as well as global treasury technology, which we won a 2014 Adam Smith Award for Best Process Reengineering Solution in recognition of how we tied all their applications and data together. And then prior to Treasury 4, I spent 6 years at Tableau Software as their treasurer, and then stayed on with the company after they were acquired by Salesforce and led strategic initiatives with them.
Great, thank you. And then Ed, we were going to have you go over some MIS related skills you see in the workplace.
Well, I think we'd need more than an hour for all of us to get our feedback and ideas on MIS. And what I would say is, I mean, for us at Treasury 4, and even just looking back at my career in corporate treasury and corporate finance, it's all about data and how you use data, how you connect to data, pull it through and do something with it, whether it's analytics for your organization, to reconciliation and being able to bridge things together. So MIS skills are critical, and they're in fact growing in the corporate treasury space. You're seeing many best-in-class corporations that are starting to pivot some of their treasury team members to being more focused on data science and use of data analytics tools beyond visualization. So a few years ago, there was a big focus on using Tableau to drive data visualization and dashboards for organizations. Now, many treasury teams are actually trying to pull in data science. And so what organizations are looking for are those people and talent that know how to work with business intelligence tools, data science tools. They know how to go after data, and even preferably know how to write scripting or analytics in tools like Python and R. And so it doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to be a hardcore developer using tools like C# or C++ or some of those languages, but it's knowing how to bring together all of the different tools that are available in the marketplace to drive the outcomes that your organization needs.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that, Ed. For the next speaker, we have Fiona Sutherland.
Yeah, hi everyone. I do not quite have as storied history in MIS as Ed might have. I was a recent grad of Gonzaga in 2020, so got to see the firsthand experience of being in a virtual first environment over at GU, and I started Deloitte in 2021 in January, so a fully virtual position, and I'm a tax consultant too that serves in our international tax quantitative consulting services function, which is just a fancy way of saying the technology arm of international. I majored at Gonzaga in accounting and then concentrated in MIS and HR. And I really do believe that even though I'm working on primarily a tax space, MIS is kind of what I use most day to day, even though tax returns is kind of the impression people get, but I honestly haven't had experience in that. But yeah, happy to be here and thanks for organizing, Russell.
Sweet. Of course. So Fiona is going to speak a little bit about automation and accounting.
Yes, and it's more of a controversial topic than I think some other spaces might be. I remember sitting in a few of our MIS courses and kind of hearing like, okay, accounting's be automated. It's like the first thing to go when robots take over and your tax return, you'll never have to look at another form again. And I kind of wish that was the case, to be honest, to a large extent. Automation in accounting right now, it's sitting at this really interesting sort of confluence of technology is getting better, it's getting smarter, and then we're also having to understand our clients' data, and they're having more and more data capabilities to be able to analyze and pivot and review. But automation in accounting is not as advanced as one might think. For context, I work in the public accounting space, so I have a wide variety of clients, and in some capacity, I work more as a consultant to come in and understand what to automate, what's the process that's getting hung up, what are even these workbooks, Excel workbooks that we're working with, and how to leverage those downstream. And I think that the accounting of the past is long gone. We are expected to rapidly analyze large sets of data and understand new regulations, especially in a tax space specifically. These regulations are not made in the terms of data and not by anybody that is competent with anything regarding automation. So it's a unique challenge because every client has a different fact pattern. Every technology is a little different. Every ERP system outputs things in a different way. And so we're in a great spot to have creative solutions to complex and changing problems. I focus on a lot of modeling, but the key of automation and accounting is to make a process easily understandable to people that are non-technology focused. And communicating and selling that work to clients, we have to have a degree of understanding that they may not be coming from a very advanced technical background. So it's this hard aspect of trying to be able to automate something and make it usable and have greater functionality, leveraging MIS and coding and developers, also retaining and having it actually be useful to the people, because we can automate everything to a large degree, but if there's no value in it and there's no transparency with it, that's where we aren't going to really be able to replace everything with robots just quite yet. So I'm hoping for more automation in the future, and it would make my job a lot easier, and I think everybody in here would benefit from it as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Fiona. For our next speaker, last but not least, we have Max Mortensen.
Yeah, thanks, Russell, for the intro, and just want to start by saying thanks to everyone for taking time out of your lunch schedule / school schedule to join today. I would say first off, it's an honor to be speaking, and especially during the middle of another March Madness run, it's always cool to get back together with the Gonzaga community and see just students and alumni and faculty. So super honored to be here. So my path is a little bit more circuitous. So I graduated 2015 as an undergrad, and then actually spent a year after undergrad too in the MBA program. So that was back when Chris Stevens was running the program too. So it's cool to see him today on the call.
Oh, wait, is she? Who the fuck is?
Sorry, I don't know.
I think someone might be unmuted.
We'll keep going and just see if it continues.
We're good.
Okay, thanks. And so, yeah, my path after the MBA program, I jumped around a little bit. So I started in real estate, which is what my dad did. So that was kind of my initial interest. And then went down the corporate finance route. And so that's how I started at Amazon, which I'm assuming most on the call know what Amazon does, but it's an e-commerce company. And through the first portion of my career at Amazon, I met a mentor there, which I think I'm going to talk about a little bit later in my personal section, but essentially made the transition within the company to go into what's called a business intelligence engineer role. And that's heavily focused on using data to drive business decisions for a specific unit, which the team that I'm on is the Fire TV team. So some may be familiar, but we make the streaming media players and televisions that allow you to watch Netflix, Hulu, etc. So yeah, that's where I am today.
Awesome. Thank you. And then for Mac's topic, we have bridging business and technology.
Yeah, thanks. So pretty apropos to what my role is. So maybe to dive a little bit more into what a business intelligence engineer does. Really related to what Ed was discussing earlier on using data as a way to make better decisions within either a program or a wider business. So my role is directly situated within the business itself. So my team, which is made up of essentially business intelligence and data science folks, uses data to better make decisions on the product itself. So, building a better, more product features or a new product offering that maybe we aren't already offering. And then also to the marketing function. So better promoting those products that we've already created. And so for me personally, the business and tech combo has been the most interesting piece of my early career. So I mentioned I started and came out on the corporate finance side. So I started heavily focused on business. But I would say that the use of technology, at least in terms of driving decisions and gathering data, has made it a little bit more interesting. So you can go all the way as far as the data science route, where you're actually predicting outcomes and using decisions with data to make wider business decisions, or you can do as simply as automating data processing and modeling. But all of those things combine together to make it a little bit more, make the business run more smoothly. And it's interesting just to be able to have a skill set where you can provide someone with either an easier solution or a solution fully packaged. So that's kind of where that interest lies. And I would say if others are interested in blending those two things, then MIS and a career in MIS is the right place to be.
Great. Thank you, Max. And then for our next section, we each had each speaker bring a personal topic that they wanted to talk about today. So to start us off, we have Ed Barrie with his personal topic. And I believe he's going to share a slide. Chris, could you give him presentation rights?
He should have them.
Okay, perfect. I may have to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, hopefully this is coming through for everybody here shortly.
Perfect.
Okay, This is actually not a ad for Treasury 4, but really more to get people to think about, the importance of data and the touch points of data. And when I'm kind of bringing on new team members, I talk about the importance of being able to both look through a transaction. It doesn't have to be specifically like a journal entry, but look through something to understand all of its touch points along the way and how it might affect your organization. And so, the world is changing in terms of being able to connect disparate data, or what had historically been viewed as disparate data, and in order to drive better insight for your organization and better look through capability. So in terms of like Treasury 4 and what we're building is the ability to aggregate data on behalf of our corporate customers. And this is types of financial data that organizations struggle to get their arms around. But what they're looking for is to have that data brought together so that they can drive new and unique insights for their organization, including that look through and understanding the touch points. And that helps you better understand, what are other drivers that you historically might not have thought would be impacting your function. Maybe it's a team member, maybe it's a certain responsibility, maybe it's even getting a much more holistic view of your organization and its financial risks or operational risks, and being able to tie these things together. And the world is shifting as well in terms of using business intelligence tools and data science tools, because it's no longer about having a number of reports, right? That day is long past out of a system. Really, what people should be asking is, do systems have all of the data that I need? And can I interact with that data using my own preferred tools of choice? Or how can I bring it together? And so I really, my personal view is really instilling in people the ability to look through transactions, but also understand the why. Why is something happening? Not necessarily how, but the why behind what you're doing or what your organization is doing. And then how can you better leverage data and technology to drive those outcomes for your organization? So I think those are really great things to keep in mind. And then the other observation I'd like to share with everybody is the idea of optionality. The more experiences you have as you go through your career, the more options you will ultimately have as you grow in an organization and through your career life cycle. So never hesitate to raise your hand and do something new, take on something new, even if it's unsettling, even if it gives you a little bit of nervousness. I've found in my own career journey that the more things I was open to in terms of doing or taking on, even if they were felt insurmountable at the time, the more options I had down the road. So I always think about optionality in terms of when you're learning things, when you're doing things, and taking on, never hesitating to take on big projects and big challenges. So I'll just kind of end there. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Perfect. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, if you have any questions, we will have a section for that towards the end. Share my screen real quick. Perfect. Awesome. And then for our next personal topic, we have Fiona talking about focusing on the right skills.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of struggled to come up with a personal topic for this, but I think I'm going to draw from a little bit of my own experience here of being a student in a very wide open marketplace, right? We are exposed to so many different job opportunities, especially here in the Northwest, and it's kind of overwhelming. I mean, this is, looking at the potentiality of careers and the skills that are required on each job application can kind of get overwhelming. I feel like when we go to university, we take classes on specific stuff, and we're always asking ourselves the question of, is this actually applicable? Is learning and spending a whole semester learning a coding language or making data flow diagrams or this sort of stuff, is this actually useful in my career? And am I going to be able to leverage this down the line? Or do I need to take a boot camp in Python or learn how to code in R? And I want to stress here that the right skill is not necessarily what's on your resume, but it's definitely more on how you apply it. And while that's generic advice for sure, knowing how to learn is, I think, a really big thing that Gonzaga focuses on, and that's been pretty evident in my success in the marketplace. I have a very traditional career path to a large extent when it comes to like the recruiting public accounting pipeline, but I find the most value and the most use out of my ancillary skills, the things that are adjacent to what I primarily studied in school. And it's not that I feel as though these like learning how to code in Java isn't useful. It's just the way in the mindset that we approach the actual applicability of these transcends beyond the core thing that we're actually studying to learn. So we have, being a student is hard enough, right? So there's this pressure to become really technically proficient. And I'm kind of here to say, like, you don't need to do everything all of the time. The perfection is the enemy of the good. And I have never, in my job, never used a coding language that I learned here at Gonzaga. Like, I can say that straight up. But one of the things that I found really valuable is being able to have a curious mindset when it comes to technology. Being able to dig my heels in and really move forward and take the ways that we approach learning new technologies and apply that to different aspects. I teach a lot of trainings to people that are much more senior than myself, and that's because I am able to take kind of the mindset of somebody that's new and fresh and guide them through something that might be more complicated or more daunting. A lot of your jobs that you might go into in the future are not necessarily sitting down and grinding and being a developer, but really communicating the value of that technology, understanding why it might be useful, and then demystifying everything else about it. Because at the end of the day, technology is supposed to make our lives easier, not confuse us and not make us seem like we're smarter. And that gets to why MIS specifically is important, rather than, maybe getting a traditional computer science degree. MIS is made to be that bridge between business and technology. And we have to be a jack of all trades to fit in the right spot. And, our first jobs are not necessarily what we want to do for the rest of our life, but being able to take every little bit of that learning and development that you have on the job and have the complementary skills that you learned here in school can make you a really powerful person in the marketplace itself and propel your career forward. So just know that you're not getting pigeonholed here, and there's so many opportunities, and don't think that you're going to have to go to boot camps and crash course data wrangling, trainings and stuff to be effective as an employee. So just keep calm and keep moving forward in MIS, because you're in the right place and have really the best opportunity to move in a great direction, especially with the way technology is going right now.
Great. Thank you, Fiona. For our last personal topic, we have Max with creating a learning community.
Yeah, thanks. And I think this is going to bridge really well with what Fiona just said. So thanks, Fiona. And I would echo, I guess, mainly the big thing that she mentioned that I think is going to be a big topic of what I'm going to talk about too is remaining curious. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to fit cookie cutter into like what your concentration was in school or what your specific job title is. And I'm going to share some anecdotes from my career history that I kind of already touched on a little bit, and then something specific that I've tried to build a little bit within the Zags Connect community. And I'm hoping that we can maybe do something more formal across the whole business discipline. So the anecdote I wanted to share was I mentioned that I started at Amazon in the corporate finance side. So I came in, I was a finance concentration, got my MBA in finance as well. So I really didn't come in with any technical skill set, I guess, beyond basic SQL. And so I started on a team where we kind of had a bunch of different people wearing different hats for different roles. And I was lucky enough to meet someone who came from a very technical skill set, and then in that role that he was in was essentially doing something less technical. And through meeting him, he offered me the opportunity to start to learn more technical skill sets, specifically in programming and languages like Python. So through that experience, I learned how exciting doing that kind of work could be. And that was kind of what led me down the path to the business intelligence engineer route that I'm in today. So that was my, I guess, kind of an eye-opening moment for me for two reasons. Number one was, I don't necessarily think that everyone believes it, but we kind of manifest this idea that once we graduate from college, learning's kind of done, that we just take what we've learned and head down our path that we already started down. But I've personally done it in my own experience, and I know lots of others have, and is that you can change your path many, many times, and you should keep learning, mainly because it's more fun, in my opinion, but also because you never know really what you're going to find out, what door will open later on. So because of that, I did make that switch over to a role that's considered technical and requires some of those skills that are in programming. So the kind of idea of a learning community, I think, also to touch on something that Ed mentioned, I thought was really prescient, was there is a lot of that uneasiness, especially I'm sure that lots of students on this call know this, when you start in a new space or try to learn a new skill set. It's very, there's so much out there, especially if, like, for example, if you're learning a programming language, there's so much you can do with even one language, let alone a whole set of different languages. And so the learning community to me is a good way to ease a little bit of that uneasiness, and find a community where you can feel like you're not the novice in the room and the one person who doesn't understand what's going on. So that's why I felt like when I did that, made those changes, when I was trying to learn that skill set, it really helped to have that one person. So you can find a community like that. You know, obviously at Gonzaga, there's lots of classmates and alumni that can provide those kinds of opportunities, but also online, there's lots of resources today in ed tech and other circles that will provide you with like peers that are going through a similar process as you. And so one of those that I wanted to touch on was just, and this is actually how I got connected with Russell too, was I started this little programming learning series where essentially it was during COVID, so we would do it virtually. But every couple of weeks we would sit down together and go through a new, we started very basically with just learning the overalls of Python, and then we would go through a new package together and just essentially do like an overview of what it was and some of the basic concepts that you could learn from it. And so if others are interested, I think we're going to plan on expanding that to, obviously if more students want to do the Python version of it, well, we can absolutely do that, but then also expand it to other languages and other skill sets that might be interesting. So I think maybe at the end, Russell might share some contact information, but just sending out before we go into the Q&A session, that I'm very open to connect with other students or graduates who might be interested in joining a community like that.
Great. Thank you, Max. Yeah, I was working with Max was a great experience, and I learned a lot. So I would definitely encourage other students to reach out, engage. So for our next section, we are going to open it up to questions from the students, and you can send questions in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself and speak into the video. Give everybody a minute to think of some questions.
All right, well, I'm never afraid of asking questions while other people figure out what questions they want to ask. So one of the things that I've been asking in a lot of these sessions is what, and I think it's particularly relevant here. What do you think is the one skill that is absolutely essential if you're going to be successful in a career managing technology?
Well, I'll jump in with that, if that's okay, Chris. And I would say curiosity. You have to be intensely curious and dig into technology, especially newer technologies, and play with them, get familiar with them, learn them, even become experts in them. But that all starts with having intense curiosity.
Yeah, plus one, what Ed just said, and maybe more specifically a growth mindset. So always wanting to go a little bit further than you've gone already. If you've done something curious recently, maybe do another thing.
And to kind of wrap up, and it's essentially the same thing as you guys are saying, but you're going to always have an opportunity to be able to move into a new space. Nothing's.
Ed, you responded with Python. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the technical needs associated with being in technology? I mean, that I think for some students, that's a concern. How much technical skill do I have to bring to the job to be able to be successful and understand it? Can you talk a little bit about how you see technology being leveraged?
I'll jump in on that. And I would say, learning how to work with the tools, right? The tools that are out there that are quickly advancing, whether it's kind of robotic process automation, RPA tools, or tools that are like Postman that are making it easier to integrate with APIs, where you don't necessarily need to know, specifically how to code, but you can tap into these tools and still drive outcomes for your organization. And so I think, it's really looking at where technology is going in the business world, whether it's, things like RPA or APIs or business intelligence, and making the most of the tools that are out there, including, things that are coming out like low code development platforms.
Mm. Other comments, Max, Fiona?
I think the only thing I think Ed summarized it pretty well. It depends on the role heavily, I would say, just in my experience in terms of at Amazon. But having a good understanding of how to build a program or write programming languages is definitely always helpful, but I don't think it's essential for every job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. It's understanding the problem first and then trying to find the best language or technology to use is going to be way more effective than just trying to spitball different coding languages. So like I have to use typically Excel based technologies because that's what most of my clients use. And then trying to maybe research in that space of what's going to be the most efficient that I can get down into from a technical side.
And Russell, I see a couple of other comments in the chat. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have from Brianna, we have, what MIS based class do you recommend, or what's your favorite class to take at Gonzaga? I think that'll be for Fiona, most likely.
Yeah. For me, it was the final capstone course. While I appreciate in the SQL class, I do use quite often, but being able to document and do a full business proposal, I have found immensely helpful. Just understanding and being able to quickly read data flow diagrams or process flowcharts or anything of the kind makes me quite an asset, because my team will be faced with a giant ERP system and they'll just send them to me and I can kind of explain the process without anybody having to walk me through it, just based on being able to navigate into different environments frequently. I didn't expect it to be the most used class, but at the end of the day, that is like day to day. It just keeps coming up. So,
yeah. I have a question. This could be for anybody. I know, Max, you talked about kind of building that learning community, and I was just curious to hear about kind of your process of networking and building that learning community. And then for all the panelists, just kind of, if you could speak to, like, do you have an easier time learning from other people, like learning in a group through experience, or is it easier for you to kind of focus on your own through some online resources?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that first one that you said. So just as in terms of the avenue that I decided to go down, because I thought that a lot of students were already on Zags Connect, that's what we used. So I'd recommend it. I think it's been a really, really nice tool when I've used it to connect with current students and alumni. So if anyone's not on that, I'd recommend checking it out. And then I'll answer the general networking one too. I think a lot of the networking events for me personally, when I was a student and early out of college, weren't necessarily relevant in terms of finding my interests. So I think that's maybe difficult, especially in person, to find a community that shares a lot of, especially if you're, blending business and technology, there's so many different specific concentrations you can go down. So I would say, honestly, the internet has some really, really great communities. And even though it's not as formal in terms of networking, that's how you can build up, a community and also a brand by learning those skills. So that's just what has worked for me, but I know everyone has different ways that they go about doing it.
Okay.
One of the avenues that it has helped me tremendously in the corporate treasury side is I've participated in corporate treasury peer groups with other people from treasury departments at other companies. And there's an organization in the US that does a really good job of that, or two organizations actually, and being able to go, about every 6 months, travel to another peer group member's office with 20, 25 other people that are doing the same thing that I was doing or similar, and just be able to share best practices and experiences in a confidential, safe way. Because in the corporate treasury space, it's very much an experiential career path. There's a lot of things that you do that are unique to each organization, but they have common themes to them. And so that ability to participate in those peer groups and do that peer knowledge exchange has been hugely beneficial for my career growth, and I've been benefited enormously from that. So that's really more on the kind of that corporate treasury perspective. And then I think on the application side of things, it's taking advantage of all the different learning avenues that are out there, whether it's online, webinar, I'm still old school. I like to print out paper and read things tangibly and make notes and highlight. But you have to approach it through that kind of constant learning and always finding something unique and valuable out of what you're investing your time in that can add value for yourself and your organization.
Yeah, and something I'll add with the networking aspect and being able to extend yourself outside of your own organization and what they're teaching you. Public accounting for me is a really high turnover industry, and I think that's becoming more of the norm rather than the exception nowadays. And so keep in close contact with the people that you like to work with, the people that knew you best and understood your skill sets, because they're going to be instrumental of being like, hey, if you contact them after a few years that they're in a new place, we're using this technology. I think you'd be a really good fit for it. That's probably the best way to get somebody and some experience from people that really understand who you are as an individual, rather than, for me, generalized trainings aren't necessarily as effective, but when you can kind of pinpoint, hey, I can transition this skill set that I have into something new, I think it opens up a lot of doors and provides a clear pathway to success.
Awesome. And then kind of building off that question, I know, Fiona, you had talked about kind of buzzwords and like there's all these new technologies that are coming out. It's kind of hard to pick which ones, but I was just curious if there's kind of a process that each of you go through in deciding what your companies will adopt, or what kind of what skills you'll add. And then I know, Ed, you have to kind of decide overall what the company will use. So I'm just curious to hear what you guys have to say about that.
Well, like for us at Treasury 4, we have both software engineers, developers that are coding in Visual Studio and on the Microsoft Cloud. So, and they have specific development that they personal development goals and skills that they're focused on. And then the rest of our team is also learning tools like Tableau or Power BI or some of the RPA tools. And so everybody in our company has to have a personal development goal for the whole year. And whether that's a certification that they're trying to achieve or some class or course that they're taking. And it could be as varied as things like a course in product management or project management. Those are two different disciplines, but also technical skills relative to coding or use of specific applications. And so, but everybody in our company is required, including myself. And so I have to, follow my own guidance and carve out time specifically to learn new technologies and new capabilities.
I can go next too. I would say I'm definitely not driving the technical bar at Amazon by any means, but I would say two sides. First, the colleagues that I have within my own group and wider team. It's very common for us to have learning sessions and informal chats, especially when we were in the office, about the work we were doing, and then maybe share an interesting project that we worked on, and like say a package or a visualization tool that helped us do the work more quickly than the standard. So that was one way. And then the other way I would say for sure is again through those online communities that I'd become a part of. So a combination of the two.
Yeah, and for Deloitte, it's kind of hard to adopt new technologies sometimes because of the confidentiality of our clients' information. We have to go through a pretty rigorous QA process, so quality assurance. But whenever we have a big proposal, if we want to invest a lot of development time, maybe start using a new technology, first understanding the problem, because you're always going to have to communicate that upward if you find something you think might be helpful, and then making a formal business case, not anything fancy, but just really bulleting out why we should use this, why nothing else, no other technology or coding language could attempt to solve this problem as quickly or as efficiently, and having that ready when you are communicating that and moving forward in your process, not just to get approval from like your manager or something, but to be able to explore all options, because somebody has probably had this problem before you. It's always worth a quick search to see if there's the hard legwork is not so always smarter, not harder when learning.
Awesome. And then kind of going along with the skills topic, how do you go about building more so the business skills? Is that solely through experience, or is there resources that you guys use to educate yourselves further?
I can jump in on this. I think mentorship is really great. This is for me personally, to seek somebody that does have the business skills that you might want, and you see them interact with either clients or in meetings, and really they have a great way of understanding either the marketplace or the problems they're trying to solve. So forming a lasting relationship and scheduling regular touch-ins, kind of being proactive about that, can further along all those little questions that can't necessarily be solved by like a technical training, right? Kind of navigating within the workspace, and when it comes to interviewing for new positions or exploring maybe mergers or partnerships, having somebody that has been in the business, for me personally, because I'm so new into my career, has been instrumental of gaining that confidence to know that you're moving in the right direction.
I would echo that as well, especially when you're starting out in your career. Early on, mentorships are really, really key, and it becomes harder the older you get, and and if you kind of rise in your career, it's hard to maintain mentorship. And so it's important that as you do that, you give back being a mentor. So it goes both ways. And there's just a lot that comes from mentors in terms of, the organization's culture, helping people frame things, frame decisions, and think about it in different perspectives. And I think, finding several good mentors can be invaluable for your career.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I thought those are both great answers. Maybe the only piece that I could say is asking specific questions. So when you do find that mentor or coach or whoever it is, asking questions, like if you saw them make a really intuitive leap, say like, what was it that brought you to that place? So just trying to learn as much as you can by asking those specific questions. But yeah, no, I thought those were great answers.
Great. Thank you guys. And also, I just wanted to kind of touch on maybe building communication skills. I know that can be a struggle for some students at the beginning, just kind of communicating more technical topics to more business people, and then also vice versa. So is there any kind of process that you guys go through that makes that easier, or is there any specific way that you've built up those skills as you've gone along?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one because it's pretty relevant to my role day to day, especially over during COVID era when it's not in person. It's been, at least for me, like even more difficult. And I would say that the thing that I've learned the most, maybe just because in my role I work with so many people, like at least a couple dozen that have different priorities and different roles. It's learning how to communicate with each person in their own individual way, or if it's a group, learning how to communicate with that group in a way, and using a mechanism that you think works for that situation. So if it's a group, maybe it's a weekly business review or monthly business review, because that gets the highlights that everyone needs for their respective roles. Or if it's an individual person, like some people really don't like to have even a Zoom type call. They'd prefer to do it informally over Slack or a Messenger. So it is just learning what your stakeholders prefer the most and adapting to that. So I guess maybe just to summarize, adaptability is a big part of that, I think.
I would echo that. Adaptability is key for sure. And I think intentional communication. And I think the thing I continue to learn is less is often more. How do you distill topics down to something that is, clear and concise and not overly burdened with, acronyms or technical jargon.
Yeah, you guys basically said it all. It's about getting comfortable and understanding who you're working with, because it's not a one size fits all issue here. And I know this is like a very, if you have a toolkit, you're trying to understand how to communicate something that's maybe more technical. Leverage the people that aren't as technical in your life and say, hey, can I just give this 5-minute, does this make sense to you? Am I communicating this in the right way? And sometimes if I'm giving like presentations or a business pitch, I'll record myself giving the presentation and watch it back. However uncomfortable it is, it's probably the best way to feel as though, you're saying the right things in the right moment, and kind of get over that initial fear. Because I've definitely lost some communication skills during the pandemic, and it's been a little bit rough trying to get those back for sure.
Great, thank you for that, everybody. And then just kind of one final question before we head into the closing comments. Why did you guys choose the career path you did?
Well, to be honest, I fell into mine. So I never had a big plan, other than I knew that being a river rafting guide wasn't going to pay the bills long term. So, but I kind of fell into the corporate treasury space, and I really found my passion around it, because it's a really interesting space. It's an intersection of markets and technology and banking and the organization itself. So being at that intersection is just a really great spot to be.
Yeah, I already mentioned it a couple of times. I obviously have kind of gone back and forth into a couple of different roles and didn't study MIS, and now I'm in a role that's MIS concentrated. So I would say, just again, kind of to bring it back to what Fiona and I said earlier about the curiosity aspect. So if you don't necessarily find something immediately that you're passionate about, looking for that passion, searching for it.
Yeah. And to be honest, nobody grows up really wanting to be a tax accountant. Like, it's not on, like, I don't have any heroes that guide me here, but I think for me, leaning in and kind of, again, falling into this role to some extent, MIS allows me to have a very great impact in some ways, and fill a gap that is not necessarily explored by people that could maybe move into a more creative or like sexier industry. This is, for me, my day-to-day is all about like being able to make people's lives just a little bit easier. And I feel like wherever you're at, whatever career you end up to be in, if you can find a piece of that and kind of cling on to it, that's what I've done. And you can find happiness within that. So food for thought.
Great. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. So if there was any closing remarks from you guys that you wanted to share before we head out.
I would just say, encourage everybody to be a lifelong learner. And no question is a dumb question. So ask questions. It's really important when you start out in an organization to ask as many questions and understand the why behind things, not just the how, but the why. And always learn something new every day, and that'll open up many options for you.
Yeah, maybe in the same vein, make mistakes. Like, I actually think that some of my best learnings or outcomes that came from mistakes that I made helped my career the most. Or maybe don't make the same mistake twice, but make it the first time.
Yeah, and this is your major, your concentration, your field of study does not define you. And you can always switch jobs, you can always switch careers. So never fall into the sunk cost fallacy when it comes to that. If there's something you're passionate about, go for it, because the present is the best time to do things that you're going to want to do. So don't hesitate.
Great. Well, thank you so much to everybody. Sorry about the slight mishap we had earlier. I'm glad everyone was able to stay on and we could continue. I know that there have been some questions about contact information, and we'll have to follow up with that after, maybe by email along with the video of the recording. And then Chris, was there anything you wanted to close us out with?
Only to thank all of you, Russell, Fiona, Max, Ed, for your time today, and to thank everybody on the call, and Wolf, for your patience with the intrusion. Like Dean Pepper said, it's sometimes disturbing when events like that happen in the middle of an opportunity for community. We'll figure out what we can do to make sure that that doesn't happen again. But I appreciate everybody hanging on, and I think that there was a lot that we could take from today's discussion. So thank you all for making time to share a part of your day with us.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next Monday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, sweet.